Mutual Wealth Investment Strategist, Izak Odendaal. Izak, thank you so much for joining us. So the JSE All Share ended the day well in the green. What was driving the market up today?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just a bit of a relief, I suppose, after a couple of days of worry that, the US economy is running too hot and, that puts upward pressure on interest rates. And then, of course, we've also had pretty weak data coming out of China in the last couple of weeks. And I think that has also been a headwind for equities locally. But then, of course, today we saw inflation numbers from the US that were slightly better than expected, and I think gave investors a bit of comfort in terms of the outlook for US interest rates. So I think all that kind of combined to give us a nice green day on the board.
Before we get to that US data, the rand recovered somewhat against the dollar after edging closer to 19 rand on Tuesday. What can we expect this week?
Yeah, I think the rand has been the same story. It's been a victim of a bit of risk aversion over the last 2 weeks. And obviously today, a bit of better news, and then the rand tends to rally quite strongly. In terms of the rest of the week, look, anything can happen. But we don't have any major data points coming out over the next couple of days. So, yeah, let's hope this little bit of a rally in the rand continues.
Like you said earlier, the US inflation data came out yesterday and it showed a slight increase from 3% to 3.2%, but still not exactly the direction they want inflation to go. And this obviously does have an impact on the US Fed's decision on interest rates and how we follow it here back in South Africa.
Absolutely. I think the good news is that inflation, although it ticked up at a headline level, it ticked down a little bit at a core rate, in other words, excluding food and fuel. So that number is moving in the right direction, but it's still very high at 4.7%. And as I said earlier, the overall inflation number was better than expected. So this is all in all a kind of a good news print. It tells us that we're still experiencing disinflation in the US. It is moving generally in the right direction, but it's not a straight line down. I think the big question remains that given the overall strength of the US economy, are we going to see continued declines in inflation, or does inflation prove to be sticky at some point on the way down? And, in which case the Fed will possibly have to raise rates or, just leave rates where they are at pretty elevated levels. So it's not, it's still too soon to declare victory on US inflation, but obviously I think the data in the last couple of months has been moving in the right direction.
So if we take the recent moves with the rand, the oil price that keeps on going up, and the US inflation, what does it spell for our Reserve Bank stance on interest rates?
Yeah, those are all crucial variables, and unfortunately the rand, has been on the back foot over the last couple of weeks, and the oil price is higher. However, I don't think by themselves that will be too much of a concern for the Reserve Bank. I think the overall trend for inflation in South Africa is still lower. And of course, if the Fed remains on hold, I think that really gives the SARB comfort that it can also keep rates where they are. We've also seen some other emerging market central banks in Latin America in particular starting to cut interest rates. So the global interest rate cycle is kind of peaking and starting to move down. And I think that does mean that the SARB can follow suit, but although it's not going to happen straight away, it will be with a lag of a couple of months. So yeah, all in all, I don't see any reason yet for us to change the interest rate view that says that the repo rate will stay where it is at 8.25%.
So just to something other, Duncan Pieterse has been appointed the new DG. He has been at the Treasury for quite some time, but in this new role, does he instill confidence?
Yeah, so Duncan, I think, is a solid appointment at Treasury, and he's been working most recently at the asset and liability side of Treasury, which means close contact with investors, managing the bond portfolio and bond sales into the market. So I think investors will know him well. He's a relatively young person to take over as DG, but I think that is a positive in the sense that it's kind of a changing of the guard, and he can be in that role for a good couple of years still. So yeah, overall, I think it's a good appointment. I think the market will be quite happy, and we wish him well.
Thank you so much for your time, Izak. That was Old Mutual Wealth Investment Strategist Izak Odendaal. Up next, South Africa Tonight.